The Vigil is a horror film that was released in 2019, and it stars that guy from the movie Ghost Shark. And unlike Ghost Shark, The Vigil is actually a great movie. Sure, it's not as scary as a lot of other horror films, but that doesn't really matter because The Vigil just does so much well. The lighting for the film is inventive, and the writing for the film is brilliant considering that most of the story takes place in a single house. However, instead of talking about any of these things, I'd like to instead talk about how The Vigil expertly handles its theme. The theme of letting go. Talking about the film's theme requires me to go through a lot of the major plot points of the movie, so if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you watch it first if you don't want to hear any spoilers. So the first time we see the main character, he is attending a small group meeting consisting of people who have recently stepped away from Orthodox Judaism. We see that for some, adjusting to a new, non-Orthodox lifestyle is not easy. Some of them even question if they've even made the right decision. This is when the group is reminded that in order to make changes in their own lives, that requires looking forward instead of looking back at their past. Shortly after this, our main character is asked to be a shomer for the rest of the night. A shomer in Jewish tradition is somebody who looks over a recently deceased body until its burial in order to protect it from harmful spirits. As you can imagine, this is when the horror part of the horror film kicks in. Turns out there is a harmful spirit that the main character has to deal with. A spirit known as a Masik. What's interesting is that the description of a Masik is different in the film than it is in real life. In real life, a Masik is described as an invisible demon that creates minor annoyances and even great harm for a person. However, in the movie, the Masik is described as a spirit with its head twisted backwards, or as the film put it,
the Masik appears as a figure with its head turned, like so, but all the way around. It is damned to look backwards, to stare in the past.
Damned to look backwards, to stare into the past. When we first find out about the Masik, we find out that it has been following the recently deceased Mr. Litvak for years while feeding off of his pain. Pain resulting from the guilt he feels for being forced to kill an innocent woman by an SS officer many years ago. Likewise, our main character struggles with guilt, and the Masik begins to feed off of that pain. He feels responsible for the death of a young boy who he saw get hit by a car. He feels guilty for not having done enough in that situation. Much like how the Masik is damned to look into the past, Mr. Litvak as well as the main character have damned themselves to look into the past, to stare at their own guilt, and what they need to do is let go. This is illustrated with the main character's final encounter with the Masik. We find out earlier in the movie that the only way to escape the Masik is to burn its true face the first night that it appears. When the main character approaches the Masik for the final time, the Masik turns its twisted head around to reveal its true face. However, the face we see belongs to the main character. It's himself he needs to overcome. He needs to let go. We see this again at the end of the film when the main character is praying over Mr. Litvak's body. At first, he asks for the Masik to let Mr. Litvak's spirit go. The problem is that the Masik is not the one that's holding on. Realizing this, the main character instead asks Mr. Litvak's spirit to let go. To let go of the pain and the guilt caused by the actions of his past. And once his spirit lets go of all of that guilt and pain, it is at that moment that the Masik leaves. I've seen a handful of reviews complaining that The Vigil isn't scary enough. It's unfortunate that there are people who are judging this film solely on how scary it is. What I think is resulting is a lot of people missing out on a lot of things that this film has to offer. As I've said before, The Vigil is a great movie, and it's not one you want to miss, even if it isn't the scariest one.